edition of the Carmen Sense podcast.
Common sense approach to real estate.
I'm your host, Kurt Boomer Schenk from The Right Creative, with our real estate expert and star of the show from RE/MAX Realty Group, Carmen Lonardo.
Yay! Mass applause. Yes.
Yay!
Yes.
Without crowds.
Hi, Kurt.
Hi, Carm. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you today?
I'm very well. Before we get started and introduce our guest, how can people reach you?
Easiest way is call or text my cell phone, 233-4119. And, of course, there's always email, carmen.lonardo@remax.net.
Okay, sounds good. Before we get to our guest, Mark Rohlin from Mission Commercial Realty, we like to just kind of briefly talk about what's going on in your world of real estate, because Mark's experience is different to an extent.
Yeah,
for sure.
No, we're gonna learn a little bit about what's been going on during the COVID pandemic with commercial real estate, which has probably accelerated things, right, where things were going. But on the residential side, the activity is out there, but listings are few and far between. As we talked about on the last podcast, the inventory was low in January. We started off the year low compared to a low year last year and last January, and the trend appears to be continuing. We are now almost mid-February, and it's slim pickings out there in terms of listings. Just an example, listed a property on Monday, and we've had over 30 showings already.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
Amazing.
That's
Just,
crazy.
Crazy stuff. So probably sell it with multiple offers this weekend.
Are the offers going high in cash? And
well, we won't know. It's delayed negotiations until Sunday noon, so we'll probably start seeing offers coming in on Saturday and
amazing.
Sunday. Yeah. So that just gives you an idea of the buyer activity is definitely out there. It's just there's not a whole lot to buy, and we're hoping that things turn around in that regard. Interest rates are low, buyer traffic is high, and as we talked about in the last show, that's pushing up prices.
Right.
A lot.
Yeah.
So.
And you know what? Honestly, winter finally got here too.
Yeah.
I mean, it finally became winter after no winter, and it's been pretty cold, and for that stretch of time.
That's right.
That might have affected it too. Anything else?
No, I think there's still hope that we're going to have a banner year, and I think we will, and we're going to keep going out there. And what I would say to folks is, if you are thinking about it, or if a friend or neighbor or family member is thinking about selling their home this year, upsizing, downsizing, whatever, moving out of the area, please give us a call, and we'll stop by, take a look at your house, and give you an idea of what its market value might be, and that way you can make an informed decision.
Right. Great. Yeah. And, even during these times when you're kind of holed up, it's a good time to start preparing your home to show, Yeah. Good time to paint, clean up, get some of those little things done that help sell the home.
Yeah.
So.
A lot of times it's a multi-month process, and sometimes people start a year to 18 months in advance.
Yeah, we knew a family in Penfield that took some time to get that house ready.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. Finally, they got off the dime.
They finally did it.
Yeah. Not mentioning any names.
Nope. Sweet people.
Yep.
Well, let's turn our focus over to Mark Rohlin, principal broker from Mission Commercial Realty. Mark's got over 30 years experience in real estate. He's won a bunch of awards in various rock bands in the 90s. Yeah, right. And actually, he's a multiple commercial Realtor of the Year in the Rochester area, winner. So it's pretty impressive. And there was a bunch of other ones. I was scrolling and scrolling. It's like, guy must have a trophy stand. That's
but you know what? He's like me. He's very unassuming and doesn't rest on his laurels and does the best thing he can for his clients. That's important.
Mark, welcome to the Common Sense podcast. It's great to have you here.
Thank you very much.
Well, tell us more about Mission Commercial Realty, and then we can start rolling into a lot of material that I know Carmen wants to go through today.
Mission Commercial Realty was established by me about 9 years ago.
Okay.
I had been on my own for a while and decided, okay, I need a corporate structure. And the underpinnings of the company are the underpinnings of my value system, which are you need to put your clients first, regardless of how it affects you, and you need to do the best job you can. So, and if you're not honest with people, you're not part of our group. So honesty, integrity, doing what's best for your client versus what's best for you are the hallmarks of my company.
Okay.
It's good stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive.
Okay.
It's the kind of guy I'd want to deal with.
I want to dive right in because, we don't have a lot of time to, chew on this stuff. And, we could talk about commercial real estate for days on end here because it's a multifaceted part of the business, part of the real estate business. But, we keep hearing over and over and over again how we have a lack of inventory, a lack of things to buy, and a lack of things to sell on the residential side. So is that the case with commercial? What's going on?
No, it's not. In the commercial market, it is a buyer's market. It is not a seller's market. It's 180 degrees from what you're experiencing. The only areas or sectors in the commercial business that are actually doing well are logistics, medical, and some investment properties. And that's by virtue of nobody being able to go to work. There are some manufacturers that are still doing okay, and there are some service providers that are doing okay, but most of them will tell you that they're not doing as well as they should be doing. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that is because people are staying home, rightfully so. I mean, for the safety of themselves and the people that are around them, it's understandable. But if you take a look at office space, is a very easy sector to talk about because there's nobody in there.
Right.
I mean, even in my office, my agents are working from home 90% of the time now.
Yeah.
Where it used to be 90% of the time they were in the office. So I've got a bunch of office space that is usually 10% occupied.
Wow.
I was at a local TV station yesterday doing a shoot. It'll remain nameless, but the whole sales department was dark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just unbelievable.
Right.
It's crazy. Will that be the new norm? I mean, is that...
It's possible. I've heard it go both ways.
Okay.
I've heard people say, well, why do we have to spend so much money on office space when people can do just as well from home? And I've heard other people say collaboration suffers when people are not together. So it probably depends on the company. It probably depends on the function. My son lives in Jersey City, and he and his wife have not been to work in over a year.
Wow.
But they've been doing their job very effectively from home. Mm-hmm. So, and that's the kind of thing that's happening here.
Mark, we've been hearing a lot about the kinds of businesses that have been shuttered up as a result of the pandemic because they couldn't do business because of the pandemic, and then couldn't do business because it was no longer financially viable to open up or to partially open up, and so they've closed up and gone out of business. So just casually driving around, we see some vacancies, some storefront vacancies, restaurant vacancies, bar and grill type vacancies. Do you think that once we move out of this, because a lot of the people watching this podcast, are small business type people that run their own businesses, and there's always an undercurrent of interest in getting into business. People want to open up their own sub shop or pizza place or whatever. Do you see any movement in the near future to refill those places with people wanting to get into business?
As long as people have the money to put into the facilities they're going into, I see people taking a look at restaurants or bars or those type of businesses, and people being willing to open once things get closer to normal. I have one client right now who is actually looking to take their dine-in restaurant and expand that to some takeout locations. That's a great idea. And there are a number of places that are available on the market. The challenge around that is pricing. Because if you've been someplace for 10 or 20 years and you're used to a certain pricing structure, going to Jefferson Road or Monroe Avenue or Ridge Road, someplace like that, the prices on these other properties are going to be much higher. And there's a lot of sticker shock sometimes that comes along with that. And that's because the national chains come along and they set the market.
Right.
So,
Right.
I mean, if you've got a brand new Chick-fil-A down the street, I mean, that wasn't a cheap building to put up.
No.
And they're probably renting it because most chain restaurants do not own the real estate that they're in.
Right.
And with the way rates are these days, capitalization rates are lower, which means the prices of the real estate are higher.
Right.
So what used to be worth $1 million might be worth 2 or 3 now,
Wow.
just because of that. So,
speaking to that part of our audience that might be a small business concern, small service provider, that wants to grow, or perhaps somebody brand new that wants to get into some kind of business and occupy some space. We know that there are differences in successfully, closing on a residential deal and successfully closing on a commercial deal. So talk a little bit about what some of those differences are for the small business people and what they might face, if they wanted to get into something like that.
well, the first thing is they need a business plan. I won't spend any time with anybody that does not have a business plan. Because they're going to need that when they go to the bank. Whether they're leasing or whether they're buying, they need to know how their business is supposed to work. They're going to need to take a loan if they're leasing or buying, because they're going to probably have to do renovations inside whatever the space is. As far as significant differences between a residential transaction and a commercial transaction, one of the biggest differences is how the commercial transactions are financed. Most people are used to going out and getting pre-approved for a mortgage, finding a place, getting it under contract, and if they're a young couple, they can maybe get in for 10% down, which these days might be $20,000,
Right.
something in that neighborhood.
Right.
But in a commercial transaction, unless you're doing a small business, an SBA loan, you're going to have to come up with at least 25% down. And then your closing costs on top of that, which could be another 10%. You're going to have at least a year's worth of taxes to set aside. You're going to have to do an environmental audit. You're going to have an appraisal done of the property, which you also have to do with a residential property. But the appraisal for this property is going to be probably 5 times more expensive. You're going to have to pay the bank's attorney. You're going to have to pay your attorney. You're going to have to pay the bank's fees. So it adds up pretty quick. And if you're looking for a property that's $500,000, 25% of that's $100,000, and that's just your down payment. You could very easily spend another $20,000 or $30,000 in closing costs, and if you have to do renovations on top of that, that could be as much as your down payment.
So clearly, and that's just on the real estate end of it. So, the financial picture, the business plan is a very important part of anybody wanting to move forward. That's a big chunk of money, right?
That's big,
you
yeah.
mentioned environmental, and that can maybe be a scary word. What does that involve?
Every commercial transaction that is financed, the bank will require an environmental audit
Of the site.
of the property. And normally it's a phase 1 environmental audit, which is pretty much an administrative, let's check the records, let's see what the uses used to be, and things like that. Most of the time it comes back and there's no issues, but not all of the time. There's one property that I sold a while ago that used to be a gas station.
Oh,
And after it was a gas station, it was a dry cleaner. And those two uses are typically problematic when it comes to the environmental audits. Gas stations will have spills of gasoline or oil, and dry cleaners will have spills of what is called PERT. It's a chemical used in dry cleaning. And it gets into the ground, and it is toxic. There are several areas in the Rochester area where dry cleaning operations have actually leached into the ground, caused plumes, and people have had to move out of their houses.
Wow.
It's very problematic. There are also
how much does that cost? I mean, so if I'm gonna go look at a space because I want to open up Carmen's candy store or something like that, and the bank wants to do this environmental audit, what's that going to cost me?
Well, a phase 1 audit should generally run between $1,500 and $2,000.
Wow.
Which
more cash.
Yeah, I mean,
just keeps adding up.
In the context, that's cheap. It really is. Because I have clients who have spent millions of dollars cleaning up a site. I mean, it's insane what it costs. And most of the time, it's legal and engineering that is so expensive.
Not the remediation. It's all the paperwork that goes with it. That's really the bulk of the cost.
The one I was telling you about that was the gas station and then dry
I think
cleaner.
I know where it is. Yeah.
There's a lot of them around, but this particular one, the total cost was $150,000 to take care of the problem. The remediation was $50,000.
Wow. Yeah, third. Wow. So we one of the things, and Mark and I had a conversation about our podcast today, and one of the things that we talked about, which is residential, but I mean, if it's a large scale operation, it could also fall into the commercial realm. But agricultural uses. You know, a lot of people want to buy these nice, 15, 20 acre parcels because they're so bucolic, but it's an old farmer's field. And, some of those guys used to store their own fuel and their own pesticides and their, tanks underground.
Wouldn't think so,
forth.
but yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah. So, you need to be cautious of that in residential too. But going back to the commercial stuff, what about? Do you see any movement? I know, Mark, you were involved some years ago with reclaiming properties that were formerly non-residential uses and making them residential uses. Do you see a movement in that regard with some of this empty commercial space?
Well, it's possible, and I actually heard a couple days ago that there was some consideration to changing uses in some more of the high rises downtown. That's really not anything new, and they're building up their base population, which is going to require more services and things like that, and that's all good. When business changes the way it operates, it changes the way everything around it happens. So if you take a look at the empty spaces in downtown Rochester, those used to be full before Corporate Woods came around. And everybody wanted to be downtown. That's why Sibley's and McCurdy's were downtown. And it was great.
Yeah, a lot of retailers.
Corporate Woods comes along and they show that, hey, this suburban office space works out quite well. So there begins a migration from downtown to suburban office space. You've got Woodcliff and a number of other developments around the south over to the east through Brighton and Pittsford and into the Victor area.
Yep.
Greece too, yeah.
There's some in Greece. Most of it is south to southeast, but yes, there is some in Greece. Most of those parks were filled by people moving out of downtown. Now, with the generation that's out there making the decisions now, they like to be downtown. So some people are coming back, but once the COVID-19 hit, that stopped.
Right.
Because everybody's staying home. And so people are rethinking now. It's kind of like nobody really understood the effectiveness working remote.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So in some cases it works great, in some cases not so much. But it's causing a complete rethinking of how business is done.
Let's talk a little bit about multifamily units because some some of our audience may be thinking that now is potentially a good time to get into managing and owning income properties, 5, 10, 15 or more units in a building. How's the climate for that, and what's the financing for something like that look like?
Well, first off, there is more to investment property than just apartments. So you could own a shopping center, you could own some flex space, you could own a Dollar General store, you could own a self-storage park. So there are a lot of opportunities. The investment real estate that's out there seems to have done quite well with the lower financing rates, pushing up sale prices, which is good for people who are selling, not so good for people who are buying. So if someone has never bought a commercial investment property before, they need to talk with somebody who is experienced with it, because there's a lot of things that can go wrong. One of the most common things that nobody thinks about, not even in residential real estate, is what's going to happen to the taxes after this closes. Because assessments are based on value, and the truest indicator of value is sale price. So if I have a building here that's 10,000 square feet that has been assessed for $1 million, and I sell it for $2 million, in the not too distant future, the taxes are going to double on that property.
They're going to go through the roof, yeah.
Right.
And so you need to be aware of that. And you need to be able to plan for it. And you need to be able to deal with those things. And unless somebody has brought those red flags up, then you're going to be hit blindsided. As far as the financing is concerned, as far in investment properties, the banks are going to look at the numbers. So the numbers of whatever the investment is going to have to meet the bank's criteria. Sometimes that doesn't happen. And when that's the case, then the deal doesn't close. But
now, can you go to a traditional bank or credit union to get commercial financing, or are there special outfits for that?
Well, you can generally go to any commercial bank. Some credit unions will also do commercial mortgages, but not all of them. And the best thing to do really is to talk to 2 or 3 different banks to find out what their rates are. And it's kind of like if you're going to hire a plumber, you get 2 or 3 prices.
Yep.
Same thing with a bank. There are a couple
Training process, though.
Yeah, there's a couple local banks that I think are more friendly versus some of the bigger banks that are around, regional or national banks. But a lot of people have the bank they like to deal with, and they should talk with them, and they should probably talk with a couple of other banks.
And of course, you'd have some banks to recommend that you've worked with before.
Sure.
And, yeah. And that's the key to having a good broker in this situation.
Absolutely.
So,
Well, it's not just the banks. I mean, you need an environmental engineer. You need a commercial real estate attorney. That's a big difference between a residential real estate attorney. When people say, what's the difference? I try to say, well, if you go to your GP because you've got a toothache, he can give you a prescription, but he can't fix it.
right.
So you go to a dentist.
Yep.
They're medical professionals, but their specialty is different. And there are some guys who do both. But for the most part, if you're doing commercial, you're doing commercial. If you're doing residential, you're doing residential.
Right.
So, in wrapping up a little bit, Mark, if someone wanted to get a hold of you and Mission Commercial Realty, what's the best number to get a hold of you?
Our office number is 348-9170.
And office is located
2481 Browncroft Boulevard, right near the corner of Creek Street.
so right down from 590.
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
One last question, quick for Mark. Where would you find a location for Carmen's Candy Store?
It depends on what demographic he's going after.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I would assume you want a lot of foot traffic. So, maybe a strip mall or maybe in a town like Pittsburgh or something like that.
I think my business model has drive-through.
Okay, drive-through. Carmen's Candy drive-through. That's brilliant. It's also brilliant like Carmen Cooks.
Carmen Cooks, favorite time.
So, what's baking?
Well, I got to tell you, it is cold out there. It's a cold February day, and when I was driving here, the snow was just coming down, and I was thinking to myself, when I'm done with the podcast, what am I going to do today? And I am going to go home, and I'm going to put my cooking attire on, and I am going to make myself a nice big pan of eggplant parm. Nice Italian, old style Italian casserole, and warm it up, and got some Sunday sauce on there, and
I was
some
gonna say, the
mozzarella
sauce.
cheese, and some Parmesan, and crack open a bottle of wine and a chunk of bread, and I think that's what's going to be for dinner tonight.
So how do you mix that all together?
That's easy. It's a little labor intensive because you get your eggplant. Some people take the skin off, some people leave it on. But
Right.
you cut it thin, about 1/8 of an inch. Maybe some people like it a little thicker, about 1/4 of an inch. I like to bread mine, seasoned flour, egg, and then unseasoned breadcrumbs. I like unseasoned breadcrumbs.
Interesting.
And then fry it in some good quality oil. We talked about this before. I don't fry in olive oil
Right.
because it's got such a low smoke point. Right. But been using avocado oil.
It's my go-to right now.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's the best.
And then just put it in a baking dish and layer it, with some sauce and some mozzarella in between. And if you got some pieces of Italian sausage from your Sunday sauce in there, or
throw
some
that in
meatballs,
there.
that's a good thing to throw in there too. And some good comfort food on a cold winter day.
Nice loaf of bread, little penne or something.
Yeah.
So that sounds great.
Yeah, dinner's
Thanks,
at
Carl.
5.
Okay, we'll be there. I'll bring the bottle of wine to
Drop
on your driveway.
Cool.
True story. Yeah. Okay, let's wrap things up. Carmen, what's the best way to reach you?
Cell phone, call or text 233-4119, or email address, which Fitz, and don't forget to mention Fitz at the end of the
He's
show.
coming up. Oh, yeah.
We'll stick at the bottom of the screen here, carmen.lonardo@remax.net.
Great. Thanks again to Mark Rohlin from Mission Commercial Realty. Really appreciate you being here. Again, we could have gone longer. There's so much to talk about.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. And like this podcast, Carmen Sense, on your favorite platform, please. It really helps. And of course, we're going to thank Fitz for another fine job here at RockVox. It's the only place to go for a really professionally produced podcast in this town.
Yeah, as long as it's not real estate related. But no, he also does some other stuff too.
Yeah, he does. He does long form videos and all sorts of things.
It's
So
good stuff.
yeah, go to rockvox.com and check it out.
Yeah.
And you can find me, Kurt Boomer Schenk, at therightcreative.net for all of your hosting, writing, and voiceover needs. And I'm Kurt Schenk with Carmen Lonardo, and thanks for joining us for another edition of Carmen Sense.
A common sense approach to real estate.
Thanks. We'll see you soon, folks.
See you next time.